Ahoy there, me hearties! This be Captain Silver Hook, and you're listening to the Two Old Pirates podcast. Set sail for an open sea of stories, tales, and some really crazy stuff. I expect you to like and subscribe, lest you be walking the plank. Ha ha ha!
Hi, this is Eric with the Two Old Pirates. I wanted to let everybody out there know that this is an R-rated episode. Once again, this is an R-rated episode with adult themes. Please do not watch this if you feel squeamish or sad about cursing. It is R-rated. Thank you very much, and we hope that you enjoy.
Hey, welcome to episode 54.
54.
Vinny's back. Vinny's back. He was not
What's
here for
up?
the Heaven-O.
I wasn't here for Heaven Oh Hello, but I was here in spirit.
So we're going to go ahead and do episode 54 today. All right, so we thought we'd do something a little bit different today. Like, everybody grew up with, like, Mad Libs and what else would you call that when you're, like, ending stories or adding to stories? Is there a certain...
Like telephone?
Yeah, something like that, like the old telephone game where you say something and you add to it and stuff. So I had like an epiphany this morning. I was taking a shower and I knew Vinny was going to be coming up, and I was like, man, what could we do that's a little bit different? We always talk about like electronics or sports or
Current
love
events.
or current events and stuff. And I was like, what could be different? I sat there and said, I'm a pretty good BS artist when it comes to telling a story, and Vinny is more like linear. He likes to know his facts before he's going to go out there, because you don't want to trip over.
I can
anything.
tell a good story, but there's got to be a baseline
And
for it.
did you see the little bit of Italian that he threw in there? Like,
Yeah.
hey, if I'm going to tell you a story about when I whacked a guy and dumped his body out with the crocodiles.
Give him a pair of concrete shoes.
But I sat there and
Oh!
that's very un-Italian. I mean, that's
Yeah.
not nice.
You're offending me.
I'm woke.
Yeah.
So anyways, I sat there and thought, what about if we just riffed off of each other, and I started with a topic and I stop in a certain part of it and he has to pick up immediately. And I think he's a little bit like, I don't know if this is going to work, but we're going to give it a try. And if it does, he'll be surprised, I'll be surprised, and we'll be happy, and we'll use it. If not, you'll never see this.
Yeah.
And this will be one of our deleted things that we release to our Patreon fans once we set up a Patreon.
Yeah. All five of you.
So I'm going to go ahead and start with a story. Am I bullshitting? Is this just fresh?
This is fresh. He has not primed me on
Nothing.
anything.
I have
he's
not
about
looked
to
anything
say.
up. I have not studied anything. It's just going to be right here. I'm going to go like straight bullshit. All right. So this is a story of Cammie, who is a college student at the University of Texas, and her boyfriend Dougie. Cammie and Dougie, and this is in the summer of 1983, and they're going to go on a camping trip with two other friends from the University of Texas up into the hill country here in Texas, over by out west of San Antonio. And so it's 1983, and Dougie pulls up in his Ford Bronco, and he just loves his Ford Bronco. It's an amazing Ford Bronco. It's powder blue, and he's got this music blaring from this band called Asia from back in the day with Only Time Will Tell, which if he was blaring that now, he'd be made fun of, but at the time it was a pretty big hit. And Cammie comes to the window and she sees him. She's like, oh, there's my lover. I love him so much. I love him so much. And she's just wearing like a regular t-shirt, and she's wearing some shorts. And he's all, Cammie, you're ready and stuff. And she's all, yeah, Dougie, I'll be down. As she's coming down to the car, another car pulls up and pulls into one of the parking spaces. And it's her best friend, whose name is Tina. And Tina, she's known on the campus for being friendly. Let's put it that way. So, although Cammie is a ditzy kind of blonde girl, she is very, very serious with Dougie. She doesn't mess around. It's her first real boyfriend and stuff. Tina, on the other hand, has dated like the whole football team. And Tina's boyfriend of the week is a guy named Mark. And Mark gets out. He kind of has, sideburns. And he's got a lit cigarette, and kind of has these Ray-Bans on. He's got his shirt pulled up, and he's going like this, and there's a big tat, and And he doesn't seem like the same person that Dougie and Cammy would hang out. They're more country club-ish, and this guy's more like hard from the road or something. And so they all meet, and they seem to get along with him at first. And Mark seems to be an okay guy, and Tina, says, he's a great guy, because she's probably known him for like 72 hours, because Tina, hits it and quits it. But they all get in the Bronco, the blue Bronco, and they drive off. And they're going way out into the hill country, past San Antonio, down from Austin, and they're just so excited because they're going to go to a place near Garner State Park, which is up by Lakey, Texas. And they're going to go tubing down the river, and they're going to stay out there. But halfway there, Mark, who's sitting in the back, starts complaining about where's all the alcohol. And so Cammy says, I grew up in a small town called Utopia, Texas, which has about 200 people, and it's a dry county there. So we thought you would bring the booze. And Mark's all, no, I'm not going to bring the booze. I'm going to go there. It's for free and stuff. And, I'm here with Tina. And I don't really care about you two. So things start getting kind of rocky. As they're getting closer and closer, since they had left a little bit later on in the day and stuff, it's getting darker. And so they have to take an old country road to get to Utopia.
So Dougie's driving, and he's going down this old country road. And it's unpaved, and it sucks. It's all just caliche, because no cars go there because they're trying to get to their inner tube spot. Mark won't shut up about the alcohol. He says we can just pull over on the way over there. But Dougie says, have you seen any liquor stores on the way out? We've been driving through nothingness for the past 100 miles because we've left San Antonio. And that would have been our last chance to get something, to get booze. And Mark basically says, pull over. I'm getting out of this. I'm walking back, and I'm tired of this crap. So Tina says, wait, Mark, don't go. I love you, and we need to make this official on this camping trip. I was going to give you a handy when we go inner tubing down the river. And Mark says, it's not worth it if I can't be tore up on Blumenflucker. So Mark, he gets Dougie to pull over, and Mark just hops out. He starts walking back, trying to hitchhike back to San Antonio. He says, I already know where the place is. I'll just meet you guys there, and I'll bring the booze, and I'll just do a beer run. And so Tina gets out with Mark because she's not going to let Mark get out by himself. So they both start walking back, and Mark's got his thumb out because they're trying to hitchhike. Dougie, meanwhile, just says, yeah, whatever, and he keeps driving with Cammy until they get to their camping location. They set up everything down there. They've got their tent. They set it up. Then they realize there's a massive hole in the side of the tent because rats have chewed on it because they haven't used the tent in years. So Dougie tries to patch it with the towels that he keeps in the armrest between the two seats in the truck, in the Bronco. And that doesn't work because he has nothing to hold it up with except for a stapler, which just rips the nylon tent even further. So they're left with a giant hole in the tent, and it means anything can get in there. Meanwhile, Mark and Tina have been picked up by a trucker who's heading back the way that they came, who's heading into San Antonio, who can drop them off inside the city. And of course, the trucker asks Mark if he knows about the rules of the road, about what you have to do if you get a lift from a trucker. And Mark says no, and that means roadhead. And Mark says he's not going to do that, so the trucker kicks him out after only about 2 miles worth of driving, leaving them to walk until they get picked up by a hearse who's driving back from a funeral, a burial ceremony. And the hearse picks them back up, and he's driving to San Antonio, except hearses don't have passenger seats, so they're just sitting in the back where the coffin usually goes, and there's enough room for them to lay down. They start making out, which pisses off the religious person driving the hearse, and he stops talking to them, but he eventually gets them back to San Antonio, drops them off at the first liquor store he sees, and pulls away. And
so Dougie and Cammy are sitting there, and it starts to rain. and their tent is not doing very well. And Cammy keeps worrying about Tina. Dougie could care less about Tina because Dougie's like, I don't care about her. She's not a good person anyways. She slept with your dad. And so, Cammy's all like, but it was just my stepdad. And he's all, no, your real dad too. You didn't hear about that. And Cammy's all, what a whore. But she's my friend. So she said, we have to go find them. And he's all like, I don't want to waste the gas or the time on them. And besides, Mark probably gets roadhead. So, gives roadhead.
Yeah, gives.
They get back in the Ford Bronco blue Ford Bronco, powder blue. And they turn around, they go all the way back out of Utopia, and they're heading towards San Antonio. And the whole way they're going real slow because they're like looking for the sides of the roads because it's dark and there's thunder and lightning and stuff. And they're like thinking that they're going to see them walking. So it literally takes them about 5 days to make the drive because they're going so slow trying to find them. And when they finally get into San Antonio, they see a rare mariachi band of 9 Chinese men. So these 9 Chinese men are in a mariachi band, and they're singing in what was, they thought, Spanish, but it was actually Portuguese, which is just a small step up, which is kind of rare to have a Chinese mariachi band singing in Portuguese, but that's why this is such a great story. So Cammy's like, I really like this, and she's all, do you have any CDs to sell? And they, of course, can't speak English because they're here on fake passports. So they continue to sing, and Dougie gets mad at her and decides to go over to the Alamo. When he's pulling in over by the Alamo, he sees a man leaning up against the Alamo with his hand, and he's urinating. He's peeing on the side of the Alamo. And he's all, hey, bud, you're in Texas, man. You don't piss on the Alamo. These people gave their lives. And the guy turns around and says, what? Hey, Sharon, where's my medicine? And he realizes it's Ozzy Osbourne. And then Ozzy Osbourne gets tackled and arrested because he was pissing on the Alamo. It really happened.
I know.
So that's a true part in this story. So he's like, no, you can't. You can't do this to Ozzy. Ozzy's like one of the greatest singers, Black Sabbath and Randy Rhoads, and you can't do this. And as he's saying that, and they're arresting Ozzy, Ozzy's penis is still hanging out. And he's still urinating like a sprinkler, and he pisses all over Dougie. Well, Dougie's now drenched with Ozzy piss, and he's like, what am I doing? And he turns back, and Cammy is just like, oh my God. And she's just listening to these Asian Portuguese singers, and she's like, they're so magical, it's so wonderful and stuff. So he finally grabs her by the hair, and he's like, I smell like piss, woman, let's go. And they start walking, and then they hear, you don't touch my friend like that. And they turn around, and it's Tina. But Tina's with the San Antonio Spurs, okay, because she's been dating them also behind, Mark's back. Mark is passed out in a gutter, and a raccoon is nibbling on his ear because he finally found the liquor store that the trucker had dropped him off, and then the hearse had dropped them off. And so he finally found his liquor store, and he took the Blumenflucker and drank the whole thing of licorice tasting liqueur, and he's passed out in the little bitty alleyway behind the Alamo where Ozzy Osbourne was just pissing. And there's a raccoon eating on him. Well, this doesn't seem to bother Dougie very much because he doesn't like Mark, so he stands there and proceeds to watch the raccoon eat off part of the earlobe of Mark. And Tina is in no way caring at all because she's looking at the San Antonio Spurs, who happen to also be in their uniforms, walking along on the streets. These like tall 6'10" people. And so she says, guys, I hate to have to break up with you, but I found Mark. So the team gets very, very sad, all 15 guys who have been following her around, and Tina has to break up with her 15 boyfriends of that day and go back over to Mark. Now Mark gets up and he's saying, I can't hear you. And of course she's all, well, raccoon ate part of your ear. And he's all, but that's the outer ear, that's just cartilage, I should be able to hear you. Then what he finds out is before Ozzy got there, Ozzy actually had sex with his inner eardrum and blew it out, and then went over to have the urination. And so Mark's deaf, he's missing part of his ear. Tina is not feeling real well because she thinks she might be pregnant now, but she doesn't know who the baby daddy is, and Maury just got canceled, so we don't know which one of the San Antonio Spurs is the dad. Meanwhile, the Bronco is in perfect condition. It still looks excellent. And you have Cami leaving the Portuguese Asian singers, the mariachi band, to come over and console Tina. Dougie could care less because he's like, I didn't get any of the autographs from the Spurs, nor did I get an autograph from Ozzy Osbourne. But although he did piss on me. And so it's just one of those days that now they're in San Antonio. They're not in Austin where they come from, and they're still not being able to, camp out where they left the tent. But now they're stuck in downtown San Antonio with the Alamo.
So the first thing they have to do is they have to take Mark down to the Methodist Hospital in San Antonio for his ear problems, and they get all four of them get back in the Ford Bronco and drive.
But it smells like piss now.
But it does smell like piss because Dougie is.
Do you remember in the story what Dougie said he would never do now? Because Ozzy had basically peed on him.
He's never gonna wash his pants.
Never.
So Dougie gets into the Ford Bronco with his Ozzy piss pants on. And they have to make it down to the Methodist Hospital to get there, so they can presumably sew Mark's ear back together.
But they had to have the raccoon.
They had to have the They also captured the raccoon in a shoebox because it just so happens that the San Antonio Spurs, one of the players, had bought new shoes. They were like size 15, so he got a pretty big box.
Which Tina loved, the guy who wore size 15 shoes. But the awesome thing is, who died at the Alamo that always was known for wearing raccoon skin hats?
Davy Crockett.
Right, so Davy Crockett ties into the whole story because he used to wear those. The raccoon that was eating off of Mark's ear is now in the box, and they're going to kill him eventually so that Mark at least gets to cover the ear with the raccoon. It's an amazing story.
Because what they do is whenever they get to the hospital, they said two things. First of all, Ozzy Osbourne has had sex with this man's ear and blown his eardrum out. So we're going to need the 411 on that. And secondly, he was being bitten. He was passed out, blackout drunk, and he was being bitten on by a raccoon. So
and the doctors, the first thing he said is, how could he get this drunk? What was he drinking?
Blumenflucker. They said, well, that's the problem. And basically his blood is flammable at this point. So they're at the hospital. They have the raccoon in a box because they're going to have to kill the raccoon to test it for rabies, because they have to make sure that Mark doesn't have rabies. So they're going to have to...
That Mark didn't give the raccoon rabies because he's been sleeping with Tina.
or the inverse. So because they have to kill the raccoon, take its head off and test its brain for rabies or whatever, Mark asks, hey, since that was an Alamo raccoon, can I skin it and keep the skin and make a hat out of it so I can be like Davy Crockett and hide my disfigured ear, because it's 1983 and plastic surgery is not at the point where they can fix an ear. But Michael Jackson's Thriller did come out, so everyone's been listening to that nonstop in the hospital. That's just what they've been piping through on the PA system. So they're all sitting in the waiting room, Cammy, Dougie, and Tina, while they're working on Mark, and they finally say, you can see him now, and they go visit Mark, and he's laying in one of the hospital beds, and Tina's like, oh my god, are you okay? And Mark is like, I think I can hear you, but my ear is full of gauze. So he's like talking to my other ear that's not covered.
You want me to pick up it? Or you?
No, I'm still going. I'm still going. So she's like, "Oh, poor baby, I'm so sorry this happened to you." And meanwhile, Dougie is standing there with his Ozzy piss pants on, and you can see like the stripe where the stream hit across the legs, because Ozzy, given the stuff that he drinks, his piss basically just stains whatever it touches, and
he got the Blizzard of Oz.
He got the Blizzard of Oz. So Cammy is upset because her camping trip has turned into a camping week, and it's been miserable because they left all the camping stuff out in Utopia, and it's all just been set up there and abandoned, and bears have probably gotten into it by now. But she's pissed off because Mark has ruined the trip by getting blackout drunk and passing out at the Alamo and allowing Ozzy to earfuck him. And so they're in the hospital trying to figure out how they're going to pay for all this. And, well, Dougie says, I've got a blue Ford Bronco. And then
Dougie is about to sell it. His grandfather was in the military during the Vietnam War. He was a chef in San Diego, California. But he would tell people I was in the military during Vietnam just to get some tail. But so he's all like, I can't sell the Bronco, and Cammy's like, but it's Mark and it's his ear and we have to pay for these things. He's all, I didn't like Mark from the beginning. I don't care if he has an ear bit off by a raccoon that he's now going to wear as a hat because of Davy Crockett. So that was right? Mm-hmm. So he's all, let me think about it. So he starts walking around and he's trying to come up with an idea. Then he thinks about it and he's all like, wait, I see a billboard, and there's a billboard for a lawyer saying, have you been hit by a truck? And he's all, I haven't been hit by a truck, but I'm going to call that. And the lawyer's name is Billy Bob Lee Jr. Thornton, Melancholy, and the Sadness. And so he goes ahead and calls this Billy Bob, and Billy Bob's all, how you doing there, boy? He's all like, look, I have a story. I was pissed on by Ozzy Osbourne, and my best friend, my girlfriend and her best friend, they have a guy here, and his ear was eaten off by a raccoon, and he was also, passed out drunk from
Blumenflucker.
And then Ozzy Osbourne had also had sex with his ear. So I don't know what we can do. He's all, well, I can't really help you out very much. If he wants to drink on his own, he can get drunk on his own. I can't control raccoons and stuff. And just because, he was almost forced to give roadhead, that's not my fault and stuff. And he's all, but what did you say about the Ozzy Osbourne thing and that sex? He's all, oh yeah, Ozzy Osbourne penetrated his ear with his penis over and over and over, evidently, until he finished. And because of that, he can't hear out of his ear. He's all, now that I can sue for. So the next thing that you know, there's a phone call placed to the Hilton in San Antonio, where Ozzy is about to go ahead and go on that night to perform after he's been arrested. And then Ozzy now has the bad news that the city of San Antonio has a referendum signed by the mayor and the city council that he cannot perform for 15 years in the city limits of San Antonio because of urinating on the Alamo. Not so much the having sex with the man's head, because they didn't care about that. That's not a state monument. The Alamo is, and he urinated on it. So therefore, he said that he's crying, Linda, I don't know what to do. And then the phone rings, and she's all like, hello, and they're all like, this is Billy Bob so and so, Infinite Sadness, Melancholy, Esquire, and we heard that you're. She's, I know all about it. Yes, Ozzy pissed all over the Alamo. And he's all, no, I don't care about the Alamo. I care about Mark's ear and what he did to his eardrum. He definitely perforated it many, many times. And Sharon Osbourne is just like, oh, Ozzy, couldn't you wait? The Spurs were just coming around the corner with the man with the size 15 shoe. You like them? And he's like, I couldn't help it. His ear was hairy and waxy, just the way I like it. And so Billy Bob said, we're going to sue you for everything you got, you damn limey, you damn British sons of bitch. I bet you're having a tea right now. He's all, no, I'm actually having a line of cocaine with ants in it. You need to look that up, kids, if you don't know that story. So he's going to sue Ozzy. Ozzy doesn't know what to do. Ozzy hangs up the phone. He's very, very scared. He's all, Sharon, I can't perform in San Antonio for 15 years, and now I'm being sued just because I had one time unprotected sex with Mark's anal ear canal. So what should I do? And by that time, Sharon has already left to go get a gastric bypass done so that she can be thin. So he doesn't know what to do. So Ozzy decides, I'm going to just go wander the streets. And as he's wandering the streets, and it's 1983, there's a young performer who happened to just be coming out of a club, and her name was Madonna. And he's all, I think I've seen you on MTV. You had a song called Lucky Star. Do you think you're lucky? And she's like, well, who are you? And he's all, I'm Ozzy Osbourne. You know, Paranoid, Iron Man, Black Sabbath. And she's all like, no, did I sleep with you? And he's all, I don't know. When will we have slept together? And she's all, I literally slept with New York in 1979 to 1982. And he's all, you mean the city? And she's all, no, the frickin' state. I was going to get on the radio. And he's all, I was in New York in 1981 twice. She's all, at the Bareback Saloon? And he's all, yes, there was a blonde woman there who I had sex with her inner ear canal. It was waxy and hairy. Oh, my dear Mark. And she's all, what? I can't hear you out of this ear. And they realized that they had bumped into each other. Well, his penis had bumped into her ear 2 years previous in a club in New York.
So that's when Ozzy started opening up to Madonna about his legal troubles. And Madonna just says, well, I just so happen to have the best agent and the best legal team that money can buy because I'm basically, you know, top of the charts right now.
She's Material Girl.
I'm a Material Girl.
She's a virgin.
I'm like a virgin.
She's True Blue.
She's borderline.
Papa don't preach.
So she's basically had all these hits, and she's able to help. Yeah, she's able to help Ozzy by getting her lawyers involved with the case. Meanwhile, Dougie and Mark and the girls are being represented by Melancholy and the Infinite Sadness LLP.
Billy Bob, yeah.
Billy Bob. Billy Corgan.
I'm bowed. I'm bowed. I'm bowed.
So, a few days pass, and then Ozzy has to show up in court. He's been summoned to appear in court as the defendant in the case, with the plaintiff being Mark. Essentially, Ozzy has to appear as the defendant with Madonna and her lawyers, and Mark is in. He's in the plaintiff's booth wearing his hat very proudly, even though his lawyer told him not to wear the hat. But he decided he wanted to wear it because it was important to the case. And they have their witnesses, and the defense calls Mark as the primary witness and says, now, were you inebriated when this happened? And he says, yes. He says, what was your blood alcohol content level? And he says, yes. And they ask him, were you aware of what Mr. Osborne was doing to you? And he says no. And they asked if he consented to it, and he said I was not capable of consenting because I had drank the whole bottle of Blumenflucker.
Blumenflucker.
So he says I was not in of sound mind to consent. He says this was basically sexual assault on my ear, and I had to go to the hospital to have it put back together by the top ear doctors in San Antonio, which San Antonio is known for having very high quality ear surgeons. And,
that's what I hear.
Yeah. So they call Dougie to the stand as well to confirm the story, saying, now let me get this straight, Ozzy also assaulted you. And he says, well, I was only urinated on, sir. He said, well, that still counts as assault. After Ozzy was done urinating on the Alamo, he turned and urinated on you. That is sexual assault as well, in a much lesser case. And he says, when you found Mark, where was he? He said, well, he was in the alley behind the Alamo, and the raccoon was eating his ear, and he couldn't hear us because Ozzy had penetrated his ear so deeply that he ruptured the very sensitive inner eardrum. And that, you know, the doctor said if we would have got there any later, they wouldn't have been able to fix it and put it back together. They said it was a miracle that this was such a incredible procedure that they had the entire staff watching, along with the interns and doctors in training, so that they could know how to do with this kind of procedure, because it was such an unusual procedure.
And you just never know when you're going to have a blown out eardrum from
penile trauma.
From audio sex.
So the defense rests their case, and then they call Ozzy Osbourne to the stand, and they said, Ozzy, how much drugs did you do before urinating on the Alamo? And Ozzy says yes. And they asked if he was of sound mind to make judgment, and he says, oh, I pissed on the Alamo, what do you think? And he said, so you've desecrated a monument, and then you attacked and assaulted sexually this man in the alley behind the Alamo. And Ozzy was like, yeah, that's what it wound up. That's what happened, because his ears looked so delicious, and I couldn't stop thinking about it, and he smelled like alcohol, and I asked him if we could, and he said yes, so I whipped it out.
And then, just when you think that it looked over for Ozzy, his career would be over, he'd be put in jail, the defense stood up and said, we do have one more question. We would like Mark's ear to take the stand. And Mark looked around like shocked, and the judge said, I will allow this. They didn't find out too much later on that he had been a huge Black Sabbath fan in the 70s and dropped a lot of acid, so he liked Ozzy. So Mark has to take the stand, but he can't sit. They only let him put his head with his ear on with the microphone. And of course, he still can't hear out of that ear. It's been fixed to a certain degree, but he's still recuperating. So every single time that they'd ask the ear a question, the ear was not able to really hear, and of course, it could not answer at all. So the defense lawyer, sat there and said, I would like to go ahead and treat this as a hostile witness. This witness is answering none of my questions. And it's also just it's not nice to look at. It's unpleasant to look at. There's a smell. There's a fungus, like a smell that's coming off of it, and it's not answering any of my questions. And the judge said, sustained. I believe that he's not. The ear's not doing anything to help your case, Mark. And Mark's like, I don't hear you. I don't know what you're saying, because it's his bad ear. So before they let Mark come off the stand, they asked a second question. They said, we called to the stand Rocky the Raccoon, which is the raccoon that had started all this mischief. But what happened was he was a hat, so he couldn't answer any questions. But there was a passerby who had seen that entire thing, and he was the defense secret weapon. And what you had is a guy named Ross Perot, who was a small businessman here from the state of Texas, who ran what was it called? Texas Instruments? Up in like Dallas. That. And he happened to be walking down near the Alamo, wanting to go see all the places where these heroic men had fought and died. When he saw a raccoon that was sniffing around a man who was on his knees, thrusting, and he ran over and said, God dang, what's going on over here? My name's H. Ross Perot. And Ross Perot, if you didn't know this man, had satellites for ears. And so he looked, and Ozzy Osbourne turned around mid-hump. He's like, I'm Ozzy Osbourne. And he saw that he had been inserted in this man's ear. And he's all, I don't think so, whack-a-mole. And he goes, booga, booga, booga. And his ears go, pa, 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 and hits him. And that's when Ozzy releases and falls to the ground, gets up angrily, because you don't do this to people in Britain. I mean, maybe in America. Walks over, stands at the wall to take the leak. And that's when the raccoon sneaks in, and Ross Perot sees him and says, hey, little buddy, you hungry? And Mark is still, of course, unconscious because of the
Blumenflucker.
And the raccoon begins to eat at it. So the raccoon is dead and can't defend himself. He's a hat. The ear never spoke to defend himself, never said anything. And due to the fact of all this, Tina, by this time, has already dated everybody inside the courtroom, and she's left with one of the bailiffs. And Cammy and Dougie just say, I guess it wasn't our weekend. The end.
Yeah. They lost the court case because of Ross Perot.
What?